The states woke up one day and said, wait, we're Texas. We have a lot of oil and gas revenue, and our pensions, when we invest in these pension companies, they're actually voting against fossil fuels. Like, that makes zero sense to us. We're giving them power to eliminate us.
Do you want a wealthy retirement without worrying about money? Welcome to the Retire in Texas podcast, where you will discover how to enjoy your faith, your family, and your freedom in the state of Texas. And now, here's your host, financial advisor, author, and all-around good Texan, Darryl Lyons.
Hey, this is Darryl Lyons, CEO and co-founder of PAX Financial Group, and you're listening to Retire in Texas. This information is general in nature only. It's not intended to provide specific investment, tax, or legal advice. Visit paxfinancialgroup.com for more information. Okay, so we have been doing faith-based investing for, I want to say about 5 years now. And the reason it wasn't prevalent prior to that is we were really big Dave Ramsey folks, and we still are. We love the investment philosophy, but there was just not, Dave loves the 4 funds. I don't know if you've ever done the Financial Peace University. It's growth with income, aggressive, international. We do too. So it really works fine. But when about 4 or 5 years ago, the marketplace really started to become a lot more divided, as you know, polarizing, and corporations were starting to take stances that undermine a biblical worldview. So the investing landscape started to change, and our clients and our interest in that space started to deviate from those 4 funds. And so we started to add a lot more color to our investment approach. And so I want to talk about kind of the last 5 years of us doing faith-based investing, because there's some interesting place that we're at today. And I want to share that with you. And the way I would describe it, I was working with Roger Stuckey here, who's one of the partners and an advisor. You might work with him. And we were talking about there's kind of 3 groups of people that are Christians who have Judeo-Christian values that work with us. There's 3 different groups of people, and sometimes they overlap. But I want to describe those 3 groups of people. And so the first group is those that invest, that use biblical responsible investing because they want to avoid companies that are bad and embrace companies that are good. So we call these avoid embrace clients. They want to avoid bad companies, embrace good companies. And that makes sense. Some people, really, it makes them disgusted to know that they're owners of companies that are doing bad things. And they lean, and I don't blame this group of people at all. In Proverbs 16:9, it says, better is a little with righteousness than great gains with injustice. I think I need to say that again. Proverbs 16:9 says that better is a little with righteousness than great gains with injustice. And it's really hard to dissect this marketplace because companies are often like people. There's not like this perfect company, or just like there's not a perfect person, but there's elements of good and bad. And sometimes they're a little bit more overt. Like, I mean, for example, alcohol companies, not alcohol in and of itself isn't bad, but we have to ask ourselves, is it a good idea to invest in that? And what are your convictions there? We know that there's an addiction. There's a lot of misuse. The statistics of how it destroys families is absolutely off the charts. And so suppose that you came from a family of alcohol abusers, alcoholics, and it impacted your life like extremely, then you may have real trouble investing, being an owner of a company that produces alcohol. Just philosophically. So I would get that. And so everyone kind of has a unique story that way. And so this idea of avoiding bad companies is, that's not lost to me. I really get that. I mean, some people say, I want to stay away from owning anything that has to do with pornography or any tobacco. I know some people that it's disgusting to think that tobacco companies target like 11-year-olds in India, or gambling. I don't want to have anything to do with gambling, even if it's like, This new sports betting thing is crazy. Even if there's profit to be made, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And some of it gets more nuanced, like ethical labor practices. Just what's the dispersion between top executive pay, middle management, and others? Forced child labor. That's an issue that really, really bugs people. Even product safety. Like, you can get really granular here. And today's world of technology, it's amazing how you can quickly identify companies that are misbehaving. Like technology, as you can imagine, artificial intelligence allows you, not completely perfect, but identify these companies that are misbehaving way before it would take, you would get a very much lagging information. Now it's almost real time. And then even there's some people that say, yeah, I know you're a good company, but you're just doing bad things. Target's an example of, and we all, I don't have to get into that, but you know how Target was behaving in the recent years. And you just say, I just want to avoid these companies that are, they may not be producing something that's bad, but their behavior is bad. Those people that come to us and say, I want to avoid these companies that are bad and I want to embrace good companies, I get you. Like, I completely get you. I got to tell you, I'm in that camp. And there's been plenty of research that shows that there's no drop-off in performance, in investment performance. But in the recent years, there has been, because those good companies haven't done as well as like the NVIDIAs and the Facebooks, those companies that have done some things that we all disagree with, some of the big companies. They've actually performed real well, but investment asset classes tend to rotate, so I don't really get too worried about that. And I am personally proud to have this avoid, embrace, exclusion as part of my investment strategy personally, but it's not for everyone. Now, the other group of people, in fact, I would say I'm actually even more in this camp, if anything, is the influence or disrupt camp. These are people that say, I don't really care necessarily, because it's so nuanced about trying to avoid companies and embrace companies. I get that, but it's so difficult to handle. And how am I supposed to, I still shop at Target. So am I a hypocrite for shopping at Target and being I don't even want to think about that stuff. That's just too nuanced. Everything's okay. I get you too. And then this group of people says, but I do want to influence and disrupt. Now, what that means is that whenever you own a stock of a company, you get a vote. It's a proxy vote. And so a proxy means that you're not traveling to the annual meeting. You're sending in your vote. Somebody's voting on your behalf as a proxy. Now, what happens when you own a stock? That's pretty easy. You get a little, if you haven't owned stock before, you get a little notice in the mail. It's a proxy vote. You read it. You say, I'm voting for these board of directors, or I'm, whatever issues on the vote on deck. But the fund world is differently, because when you have a mutual fund or exchange traded fund, the vote that you get as an investor is actually transferred to the fund company. So if the fund company shares your values, then that's fine. But if they don't, if they absolutely have completely opposite values than you, then that's a real problem. And this was really transparent with fossil fuels. So oil and gas companies, they woke up, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago and said, wait a minute. States actually did this. I'll tell you, the states, I actually saw this in real time. The states woke up one day and said, wait, we're Texas. We have a lot of oil and gas revenue, and our pensions, when we invest in these pension companies, they're actually voting against fossil fuels. Like, that makes zero sense to us. We're giving them power to eliminate us. And so that happens actually in Christianity too. Is like, so some of these funds that you invest in, you've got to be very careful that they're not voting against you. The specific issue that I think really should have woken us all up, and we can't be too complacent here, is the Equality Act. That was a key priority with the Biden administration. And this was making sexual orientation and gender identity as a protected class under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But doing that really becomes problematic. As an example, if you go to, there's in Alaska, a biological man who identified as a woman who attempted to enter a Hope Center, a shelter for abused women. And since the women share the same bathroom facilities and sleep near each other, the shelter said, no, we can't let you in. So he later filed a complaint for gender identity discrimination. And so that's where it can be really problematic. And so like adoption agencies, churches, prisons, this can be a real problem in prisons. If the Equality Act were implemented, we would see chaos in prisons. In healthcare, we see it in public schools, in sports, bakers, florists, photographers. All of them would be impacted by the Equality Act, wedding venue services, counselors. And if we think that that's not going to happen, then we just need to wake up real quick, because overseas, for example, in Spain, there's 2 Catholic bishops who've been prosecuted for repeating the Catholic Church's teachings on marriage and equality. In Ireland, a school teacher was dismissed from his post and eventually jailed for refusing to call a student by their proper pronouns, or what transgender pronouns. And then finally, pro-life activist in England was arrested for silently praying outside an abortion facility. This Catholic woman held a rosary, did not speak, but simply stood in silence. She was arrested, tried, and ultimately acquitted, and then ultimately arrested again in 2 weeks. Unbelievable stuff happening in Europe that will happen here. And it'll happen here if corporations use your dollars to support legislation that would undermine a Christian worldview, just like corporations use oil and gas money from oil and gas companies' money to support legislation that would undermine oil and gas. Same kind of principle. And so that's where I started getting really heavy into the Christian investing business, because I saw that the power of pooling dollars to influence legislation was really important. And that group of people is the influence and disrupt group of people. So you have the one, the avoid, embrace, and then you have two, the influence and disrupt. And the third group of people love just as much and just have different convictions and say, yeah, I just don't see it that way. And here's the thing about it, I think, that I love about PAX. None of us here are like, here's the Bible, let me hit you over the head with it because you're a sinner, because you don't believe in this. I don't see that. I see that we're kind of like all on this journey together. And I want to share kind of the issues that are going on and let you wrestle with these and see how we can help meet you where you're at, and then walk alongside of you. So there's a third group of people that say, I'm not yet bought into the avoid embrace. I'm not yet really sold on the influence and disrupt, but I am. And Roger framed this group of people as I'm the give and support type of person. What does that mean? That means that they want to work with an advisory firm that understands their strongly held Judeo-Christian values, somebody that can relate to them and that can walk alongside of their investment journey as they discover new things, and that their perspective shifts along the way. And even the marketplace changes as new tools and resources and technology and ideas come around, which moves all the time. Things are always changing. And they just want to walk alongside an investment firm that can, at the very least, honor their values. And that can mean in terms of tithing, like somebody comes in and says, I want to start giving 10% of my money to the church, and they don't sit across the desk from an investment advisor that says, why would you do that? Like, I don't get that. And that's not the culture, of course, here. We embrace that and we understand it, and then we try to find ways to do that effectively, like how to reduce your taxable income along that journey. Or if you talk about inheritance, what does that mean to leave a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children? And so talking through that, or even talking about, like, we've gotten into stuff where, and it's challenged. It doesn't always work out well. We try to do our best to just kind of be sensitive to things, but like we've had plenty of families that are going through deep stuff, marriage issues, where we can say, okay, let me point you to some counselors just to walk alongside of you, and I'm rooting for you and I'm praying for you. Or how do we get out of debt? Because Christians tend to be allergic to debt, and there's some spiritual reasons why. And then you get into some really nuanced things, like how do we utilize donor-advised funds to do our giving in a very, very strategic way. And I've talked about that in other podcast episodes. But the main idea of this group is, like, I'm not yet an avoid embrace Christian, neither am I a influence or disrupt, but I do want to work with an advisory firm that can help me understand how to give and then support me in that journey. That's the third group, and you're equally entitled to that perspective. And I don't think there's a right or wrong in any of this. I think we're all kind of discovering it together, because this is not like, hey, I can look up the book of Numbers and understand sophisticated investment strategies. We've got to go to the Word of God and then try to understand how that stuff applies today through the principles of the Word of God. And there's over 2,000 scriptures on money, so it can be nuanced. But we think about that deeply, and we recognize that there are three groups of people, and they all have different perspectives when it comes to money, and they all kind of view things differently. And I think for most of us, we just fall short of thinking about it all the time, this idea of money in our faith. And I think the more that we think about it, I think the closer we get to God's will in our life and what He wants to do in and through us regarding our finances. So there you are. Which type of person are you? Are you the avoid embrace type of person? Are you the influence or disrupt person? Or are you give and support person? either way, I want you to know that you're welcome with PAX, of course. And what we say oftentimes is we're fiduciaries who honor Judeo-Christian values. And so we'll continue to do that, and we're honored to serve you. So thank you for listening. Hope that all makes sense. And remember, you think different when you think long-term. Have a great day.